Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Leslie presents. And now your host, Paul Leslie.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our great pleasure to welcome our special guest, Baayork Lee. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here, Paul.
I think most stories are best from the beginning. What was life like growing up?
I was not your average kid. Let's put it that way. When I was 5 years old, the casting directors for The King and I came down to Chinatown, New York, looking for children for The King and I, the Broadway company. So I was one of the lucky kids that my mother took me to the audition uptown, and I got it. So at the age of 5, I was doing my first Broadway show. And I saw all the dancers warming up, and I said to my mother, that's what I want to do. And so I outgrew my costume at 8 years old, so I was in the show for 3 years. And then I went on to the School of American Ballet because Jerome Robbins was the choreographer, and most of his dancers went to the School of American Ballet, and they were in the New York City Ballet. But that's where I studied.
Tell us about your parents. Were they supportive of your dreams?
My mother certainly was supportive of my dreams because that's what I wanted to do. My father owned a restaurant in Chinatown, and that was a 24/7 job, and so he didn't really know about show business or anything like that. But my mother was the one that was very, very supportive of me. And also, at 5, I knew what I wanted to do, and I was determined to do it. So I kind of told them what I wanted to do.
Now, not the first musical that you performed in, but can you remember the first musical that you saw?
I think it was either The Sound of Music, because, we had performances, and so we could only go to their actors' benefit, and it could have been Sound of Music.
You mentioned earlier about The King and I. I have read that you actually got to know Yul Brynner very well.
Yes, we all called him Father. He just loved us and took us to the circus, but I was a baby. So years and years later, after I had been in the chorus line, he came back to Broadway with The King and I had already left the chorus line, and I was only doing the foreign companies, directing the foreign companies, and I knocked on his door. And someone told him that I was going to be there, or one of the original kids, was coming to see him. And I knocked on the door, and he opened the door, and he said, Baayork, I have been waiting for you all these years. Where have you been? And he had followed my career. Isn't that something?
It is something.
Yeah, and he then started to mentor me because I told him I wanted to direct. I had already directed the Australian company of a chorus line and also Germany and Stockholm. I was into directing, and he really encouraged me and mentored me. And I went on to London with him to learn The King and I because he was doing The King and I there in London. I spent 2 months there watching the show, learning the show under his tutelage.
Tell us about the various dance styles you have studied. Is there a style that you like the most?
Well, there's that Michael Bennett. I've been with him the longest, and I know his style the best. But, I've worked for Michael Kidd, Peter Gennaro, Donald McHale, Nora Kay, and Herb Ross. They did Golden Boy. There's so many styles that I've worked with, and I really believe that Michael's style fits my body the best. And it's very earthy and down and low because I'm 4'10", and Michael was short also. So we did everything close to the ground.
The history that you have with Michael Bennett, it's a big part of your life. What was your first impression of him?
Michael used to come down every summer to study with my dance teacher, Sevilla Fort. So that was during the time I was doing Flower Drum Song. And he tells me that I walked in one day and I said, I just got my second Broadway show. And he said, I hadn't even started yet. Then later on, Michael and I danced in Here's Love together with Michael Kidd. And I just remember Michael as a very free dancer. I was very structured coming from the New York City ballet background, the School of American Ballet, and also Sevilla Fort. And Michael was very free, wonderful tap dancer. So my impression of Michael was I loved that style, very open, very free, and he could improvise on a dime. The music would play and he would just dance. I envied that because I was very structured at the time.
On that note, I wanted to talk about a chorus line a little. The role of Connie Wong, in large part, well, it was based on you. How does it feel to not only play yourself, but also when you see other people playing that role?
I'm very, very flattered. That's the first thing. And so happy that I could contribute to the show and to have an Asian girl work for the past 39 years, to have at least one Asian girl have a career. When Michael asked me to start directing the show, because he was going on to direct other things, and so he needed someone to go off to Stockholm and Tokyo and Australia to direct and choreograph the show, I had to put Connie as just being a part of the show, and she was no longer me, even though that was my life. So it's wonderful that she is who she is, and that's who I was. But I am not Connie anymore. Connie was a struggling dancer singing God, I Hope I Get It. And Baayork has surpassed that. I'm directing the show now and choreographing the show now, and I'm producing. I have my own company now, Asian Artists Company, and I'm producing. So when I direct Connie now, she is a character in the show.
What are your fondest memories from the early performances of a chorus line?
Oh, so many, Paul. I just remember we were in previews and Bob Lapone said, come here, let's look out the window. And there were all these black limousines lined up all the way down the street, Lafayette Street. And then we go on the stage, and there was Jackie Onassis and Diana Ross sitting on the stairs because they couldn't get a seat. And Groucho Marx loved us, and he sent us cakes, and Lucille Ball would knock on the door. It was just very exciting. But it took us a year to develop the show, and that was a wonderful period in our lives because it was kind of like group therapy when we talked about ourselves and why we were dancing and things that dancers never even think about. Michael had us sit down in a circle and discuss why we were here and what did we like best and what were we doing at the age of 2 and 3 and why did you come to New York and all those things that you don't think about unless you're in therapy. And here we were writing a show and we didn't even know it.
So many incredible creators played a part in that, and I wanted you to talk about Marvin Hamlish.
Marvola. Marvin was Michael's first show that I did with him was A Joyful Noise, and the second show was Henry Sweet Henry, and Marvin Hamlish was our rehearsal pianist. Can you believe that? And we had a wonderful time with him, and then here, years and years later, he's won 2 Oscars, and Michael asks him to come and to create the music for the show. And that was a wonderful experience because we had already been in 2 workshops before Marvin came on board, before the lyricist came on board. And so the dialogue was there, and I just remember Michael would say, okay, everybody has their turn to go down and talk to Marvin. And when it was my turn, Marvin, I've known him for years, and he was just tinkling on the piano, just playing the piano. And he said, okay, what do you say in the show? Marvin got us down, and he created our theme. And when I say theme, it is underscoring. And I think he was in that kind of mode because he had underscored 2 films prior to A Chorus Line. And so the entire show is underscored like a film.
Our special guest is Baayork Lee. How did you make the transition over to doing choreography?
God bless Michael Bennett. Michael said, Baayork, the show is yours. I am going off to do other things, and I just need you to take care of the show. And that meant going off to Australia to direct and choreograph and cast it, and going to Stockholm and to Berlin and Italy and all over the world. I didn't even think about it because it had to be done. And also there was an obligation that I had to the original company to really have it done the way that Michael wanted it. Michael had created it. We all created it. How we all created it. I really felt that it needed someone who had been in the original cast, and I was very happy that he chose me.
Tell us about the National Asian Artists Project.
Oh, Well, that's the love of my life. I'm really married to the company. For so many years, I've been auditioning, and Asian actors or dancers or singers would come in. And I also directed The King and I. And last year, I just choreographed Miss Saigon. And when they come in, they're fine. They're good. But there's a lot more needed from the Asian artists. Not everybody. And the ones that have it, the triple threats, they work all the time. So I decided that I would form a company to really support the Asian artists, because if you're not doing The King and I and you're not doing Miss Saigon, you're not working at all. Or 2 actors in Thoroughly Modern Millie and 2 actors in a couple of shows. But that's one in a chorus line, the Connie. But if you're not in those shows, King and I and Miss Saigon, you're not working. Therefore, why should you take singing lessons, or why should you continue to study? And so I produced Oklahoma, Carousel. Last year was Hello Dolly, and this year's Oliver. And I also formed a choir. The number is up to 40. They get to sing once a week because there's not a lot of money. They don't have a lot of money to take voice classes if they're not working. And so they come once a week and they sing, harmonize, and they brush up on their sight reading and things like that. We are also going down to the Kennedy Center June 15th, and we are doing a benefit for the Philippine Embassy for the flood victims, and Lea Salonga will be with us. So a lot of good is coming out of it. Also, they will be performing in shows like Dolly and Oliver in Oklahoma, those classics that they may not be hired for, and they have an opportunity to put that on their resumes. I'm very happy that I am giving back to my community.
You mentioned Oliver. I wanted to talk about this upcoming production by the National Asian Artists Project. And it's of the classic Broadway hit musical Oliver. And it's going to be at the Pershing Square Signature Center in New York City from June 5th to June 7th. Tell us a little bit about this production.
Well, Cameron McIntosh gave me the right, and I have to do the company that he produced in London in 2011, which is very different from, not that different, but he wanted that production, and so that's what we're doing. Lots of dancing and lots of singing, very memorable songs, very famous songs, and I think the most important thing is that the Asian community gets to see their own performing, as well as we invite directors and choreographers and casting directors. I don't want to do anything that's that far out, because I want the theater community to see the artists playing the roles as they were created.
How does it feel when a production you're working on comes to an end?
Oh, you know how it feels. It's like you've given birth and the baby's gone off to college, and what am I going to do next? And so I make sure that there's a chorus line somewhere in the world, or this year I'm helping out the New York Shakespeare Festival on their benefit gala that they're honoring Marvin Hamlish on June 23rd, and the original company is going to be coming in from all over the United States to honor him. And the show is going to be 40 years old next year. If I don't have that on my plate, I've got the National Asian Artists Project, so I'm very happy about that.
A simple question. What is it you like about theater?
What is it that I like? I love theater. It's in my DNA. I think I was born to do what I'm doing. At the age of 5, when I walked in that majestic theater and I saw the chandeliers and I saw the red velvet seats, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and that was 5 years old. I have not looked back. I have just gone forward. What is it that I love about it? I love the creativity. I love being on the stage performing. And then after that, I love teaching, and I love passing on Michael Bennett's work, his legacy. I love everything about theater. I'm stimulated when I go and see a show that is wonderful, that makes you want to jump up there and you want to be on that stage, and you're inspiring people. I have a class after school theater club down at PS 124 in Chinatown. I have 30 students, and some of them have been with me for 4 years. And we've taken them to the Junior Theater Festival down in Atlanta. They'd never been out of Chinatown, never been on a plane, never had a pajama party, and they're meeting 3,000 other kids. We're the only Asian and the only ones from New York. And how proud I am to say that they won Best Production. We've done Beauty and the Beast with them. We've done Little Mermaid, and this year we did Aladdin. We also won Best Production. And so they come back, and now they go to the theater. Their parents take them to see Aladdin and Annie and Lion King. And how proud am I as a teacher, as a performer, as a director, to see their growth. And I'm giving back to the community. I also started for the parents who were waiting for their kids, I started a sing-along. And I said, come on, you're waiting for the kids, you're in the hallway, why don't we just there's a room in the back with a piano, and we'll just do a little sing-along. Well, that has turned into a wonderful sing-along for senior citizens down in Chinatown. And they are just singing everything they can get their hands on. So I just feel so blessed that I have the after-school program. I have the sing-along program. I have the choir, the National Asian Artists Broadway Community Choir. And I have the shows, the big shows that I do, Oklahoma Carousel, now Oliver. And I just feel that my arms are very wide, and I want them to reach all the way over across the sea to England and to Australia and to Japan. And I really think that it's in my blood. I know I was meant to do all of this.
What is the best thing about being Baayork Lee?
Having wonderful friends and loving family and great supporters. That's the best thing.
This is a totally open-ended one. You can say whatever you like. What would you like to say to anyone listening to this interview?
Don't give up your dream. Don't give up your dream. Follow your dream to the end, to the end, to the end.
Our special guest has been Baayork Lee. My last question, who is Baayork Lee?
Oh, she is 4'10" and just in love with life.
That's not a bad place to be. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you, Paul. This has been wonderful, Paul. I love the fact that it was just off the cuff. I love it.